none of us, and I do mean none of us, truly understand high-end greatness. Good morning, welcome to another episode of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate you for tuning in today. This is the show that values time. I value mine, you should value yours, so let's get started. We gotta start today off by having the conversation that nobody wants to have. Everybody wants to come on and talk about the finals, the games, all these different sports in reality. We all want to come on TV or go on YouTube or go on Twitter and talk like we really understand it and our knowledge of the game, and I want to show you I know more than you. And I'm guilty of this at times. I want to come on here and the whole reason I started doing a podcast is I wanted to be able to show, oh, look at how much I know about these sports. Look at how much I know about this category, right? But the reality is, none of us, and I do mean none of us, truly understand high-end greatness. What the Golden State Warriors are, and more specifically Steph Curry, is high-end, all-time greatness. And you can look at last night's game and go, Steph didn't make a three. He broke his record of an infinite amount of games in a row making a three-pointer in the playoffs and the finals games, just in games in general, right? He had this insane record, and it's like, oh my gosh, he didn't play that well last night. The Warriors still won. But part of that is a part of Steph Curry's greatness. Like I said, we as normal people, sometimes we just truly can't understand greatness. It doesn't make sense to us. So we say things and we rationalize it in a way to make it make sense to us. I'm going to start and I'm going to go through every single truly great. And I'm not talking about guys who are just really good to great, really great. I am talking about the high-end, top of the pantheon, the greatest to ever do it. And I'm going to show you why we don't really understand it. And I still, being a normal person, I don't understand it. Let's stick with the NBA. In the 80s, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, the two truly transformational great players. We didn't understand it. People didn't understand it back then. Magic Johnson was a 6'9" point guard. To this day, that's not normal. A 6'9" guy, that kind of court vision, can handle the ball. A guy who can go into a big city and just seamlessly fit in, play with another all-time great in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a rookie, and just take control of the locker room, take control of the city, take control of the entire offense on the floor, runs the fast break better than anyone who's probably ever played the game of basketball. That's not normal. That's not something that even now, if you dropped Magic Johnson into today's game, it would be weird. A 6'9" point guard? Like, we have point forwards. You've even got examples of like a guy like LeBron, but LeBron can't do what Magic did in the half court. And even LeBron, for as great of a passer as he is, no one thinks he's quite Magic when it comes to being a passer. Couldn't explain it then, you couldn't explain it now. We can act like we do. We can say he's a tall point guard. Well, there's been a bunch of tall point guards in history. One truly stands out. Larry Bird. Before there was LeBron James, Larry Bird was the how does a forward pass like that? How does a forward shoot like that? He was the guy who was 6'10", could pass, shoot, rebound, could do everything on a basketball court when that just wasn't normal. And let's also be real about the facts here. When you look at the all-time greatest NBA players, you got a bunch of black guys, you got one white guy. It was not normal for anybody in the NBA post the 1960s to be that great and look like that. Shooting, passing, rebounding, the color of his skin, his height, wasn't normal. You could say, oh, he's a stretch four. Or, oh, he's a forward who can shoot. We see that a lot now. The guys playing now, they can't shoot like Larry Bird. And a couple of the guys who are that height, and can shoot like him, you want to go to a Dirk. If you want to go an all-time case, if you want to take guys of comparable size who shoot that well, take a Peja Stojakovic, your Rashard Lewis. They couldn't handle the ball like Bird. They didn't rebound like Larry Bird. They weren't as offensively gifted beyond their three-point shot like Larry Bird. We can say, oh, he's this, oh, he's that. The reality is, Bird was too great for any of us to understand. Bird was so great, he's the only guy in that top 10 realm where he did not really have a full career. You could argue him and Shaq are both in that case. We saw them at their peak, we saw them at their best, but you could argue both broke down before we got to see a totality of a career. But Shaq even did it even a little bit longer than Bird did. Go to the 90s. You know where we got to go in the 90s. How was a guy at 6'6", who's that athletic, that technically proficient, that good of a jump shooter, that tenacious of a defender, and Michael is the only guy, and the thing that just puts him in this super rarefied air. He made the other greats of the 90s, Hakeem, Barkley, Robinson, Shaq, even towards the end of it. They were looking at this guy like, how does he do that? He was the gap between Michael, the way he looked. He presented a look that showed his gap was massive between him and his next closest competition. You see the shot versus Drexler. Drexler was considered the second best two guard in the league. And then he played Michael. It's a Grand Canyon of a gap. 35 points a game. He averaged 37 one season. 63 against the Celtics. 3-peats, retires, 3-peats again. The famous Michael Jordan pose. You can't explain that. You could say, oh, well, Mike's just a hyper-athletic and a super good jump shooter. We have a bunch of those. Why don't they average 37 points a game? Why aren't they winning 3 titles in a row? Why aren't they making multiple all-first-team defenders? We don't really understand greatness. The other guy who deserves consideration in the 90s, how did Hakeem's feet move like that? Do you know how hard it is to move your feet at 7 feet tall? Oh, well, he just has good footwork. My ass, he's got good footwork. To be that smooth, that agile, your feet to be that mobile at that size? There's a reason why when Mike left and the knock used to be, oh, well, Kareem only won when Mike retired. Nobody else won besides Kareem when Mike retired, so... And Charles has a lot of Western Conference Finals, but he don't got a lot of NBA Finals because he kept running into that guy from Houston. The 2000s. This one's an easy one. This one's probably the easiest to explain, and it still doesn't make sense. How the fuck is Shaq that big? How is Shaq that big? And he can move that fast. He's that strong. He's that dominant. People complain about numbers are inflated now because no one plays defense. Well, did people play defense in the early 2000s? Because Shaq averaged 38 and 13 for an NBA Finals. Shaq went 3 years in a row of just running people over, being too big, too strong. How did Shaq do it? Like, for real, how do you can say, oh, he's just the biggest guy on the court. There's always a biggest guy on the court. Joel Embiid, who we all think has Hakeem-like footwork, or is Shaq-like big. And Embiid is fantastic, an amazing player. He's not Shaq. He's not Hakeem Olajuwon. You can't explain true greatness. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. Footwork, the skill set. Guys who, before LeBron came into the league, there were guys saying, yeah, if Kobe does this the rest of his career, this is like, he's going to pass Mike. And we can all act like revisionist history, like that was not a conversation. But that was absolutely a talking point during the prime and the apex of Kobe Bryant's career. His footwork, a first-team all-defense 10 times. Despite what people say about his passing, the most, up at the time of retirement, the most assists ever for a non-point guard. We all know the scoring. How do you explain it? Oh, he's an athletic guard who could shoot a little bit. We got a bunch of those. Oh, he's an athletic guard who could shoot and he could play defense. We have those. Why aren't they Kobe? And then you got LeBron. I mean, like, you could say, oh, well, he's taller, bigger, and faster than everybody. Well, Dominique Wilkins was taller, bigger, and faster than everybody. And Dominique was a great player, but he wasn't this guy. LeBron's ability to not only be that athletically gifted, but to adapt into a shooter as the league progressed, and he progressed with the league. He was not just left behind in the time. For LeBron to still be averaging 30 points a game in year 19. For LeBron to have won a championship in year 17 during a pandemic. For LeBron to be, we all know, the child prodigy, all of the expectations, and to come in and still exceed expectations. How do you put that into regular words? Regular people can't. And we never will be able to. And then we got the guy last night. The guy who is forerunning the current NBA dynasty. The greatest shooter of all time. And a guy who, I keep hearing all this, oh, he's going to make top 10, he's going to enter into the top 10 list. No. Steph is knocking on the top 5 door. Understand this. Charles Barkley is one of the biggest media personalities in the world. And Charles is funny, he's great, he's obviously he's a Hall of Famer, former player, so there's a lot of respect and credibility in just his kind of gusto and opinion, even if you think his opinion is dead ass wrong and he doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. And it was growing up, Charles was the number one voice of jump shots can't win a title. You gotta have an inside game. You gotta be able to drive to the basket. These guys, you can't do jump shots and win a title. All these teams, they can't shoot this many threes and win a title. Enter Steph Curry. I was watching an episode of First Things First yesterday, and they're talking about, or 2 days ago, I'm sorry, and they're like, well, what's Steph's greatest game? And they're talking about this playoff game and that playoff game. And I thought to myself, Steph's greatest game is when he dropped 60 in the Garden. And he put the world on notice that, oh yeah, this guy who was a college star at Davidson, but it was a cute story. It was the undersized guard who could shoot a lot of threes. But that won't translate to the NBA. He gets drafted by the Warriors. He still is a good three-point shooter, but he's not all-time at this point. Has multiple injuries the early part of his career. See, that guy can't stay healthy. He's just a little guard. He shoots threes. It's cute. It looks cool. And then he keeps doing it. And doing it. And then you look up and you go, 4 of the top 5 all-time three-point seasons are owned by one guy. The current dynasty in the NBA, which is primarily offensively carried by one guy. A guy who is, when we talk about the greatness of Steph Curry, and we, like I said, us normal people, we can't really do it. There's 2 guys in the history of this game that when they shoot the basketball, even if you know it's going to go in, or even if you think you've seen all of the moves in their bag, all of their skill set displayed on a court, it still just looks cool. Puts you in awe. It's almost like a great painter. And that's Steph, and that's Kobe. You see Steph shoot a basketball, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's still the coolest thing ever to see it go in. We remember the game in the Garden. We remember the game against OKC where he took 2 steps past half court, made the game-winning 3. We remember these moments of Steph shooting the three, walking away. Shoots the ball so fast the cameraman can't even keep up. Changed the game of basketball forever. Whether you want to say it's for the better or worse, changed the game forever. The way people shoot, the way people play offense. This is not a slight on what anything the Celtics do in this series. Sometimes you just run into one of the greatest players of all time. And it's a greatness that we just truly can't understand. Magic, Bird, Jordan, Hakeem, Shaq, Kobe, Steph, LeBron. We just don't get it. Now there's other guys who are in that top 10 all-time pantheon who we understand. Tim Duncan was very understandable. Tim Duncan was just mastered fundamentals. It doesn't mean he wasn't just as great as some of these guys, but we could understand that great. It was human. It was not otherworldly. I understand why Bill Russell is an all-time great. I understand why Wilt was Wilt. I understand why guys like KG, like there's David Robinson, like there's just guys who are so fundamentally sound. We understand it. You can pick up a basketball and you can shoot and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. These guys shoot a little better than me, or their footwork's better than mine. And then there's just these transcendent players who, quote unquote, do everything that the rest of them, and they still stand out. We don't understand greatness. We're just normal.